The purpose of this ethnography project is to delve into the issues faced by a group not commonly studied in this regard, composing musicians that share their music with the world. Through primary and secondary research, conclusions were able to be drawn based on these individuals. These are the steps of how they were obtained.
Let 'em see, but don't let 'em touch, 'cause there's not a man in this world that you can trust, and the shinier that they are, the quicker they cut right through your heart, and it all...
To begin any ethnography project, secondary research needs to be obtained in some way. For most groups, there is an abundance of this research available. However, with the group of composing musicians that share their music in some way, research was far more scarce. Because of this scarcity, greater effort had to be placed into finding research, such as through the sources of other authors. By the end of this work, 5 scholarly sources were able to be acquired. The first of these sources was an article called "Silence is Deadly" by Callier, Banfield, Batterham, Morse, Forbes, Karen Arthur, and Fisk. This article studied 800 male students across 8 different schools in hopes of studying the effects of a program known as Silence is Deadly. This program brought help to the individuals in need rather than expecting them to seek it themselves. However, because the research is fairly recent, no definitive results have been published. Regardless, researchers presume that conclusions will allow help to be offered far more abundantly than what current times allow. The next research studied personality traits of Norwegian musicians as well as the various forms of help they acquired. Through studying 2,121 musicians, 1,607 of which had been musicians within 12 months of the surveys, it is concluded that individuals that sought alternative methods of help for themselves often found greater levels of openness within their work. However, it also varied greatly on the overall personality of the individual studied, as many others found greater levels of anxiety through these methods. The purpose of this study was to spread awareness of the importance of one's personality, as well as to spark further study in the field. The third form of research was found in an article by Russell titled "Empowering Musicians." This work made the claim that a musician is, in essence, an extension of their instrument, and thus must be both mentally and physically well. However, this author didn't conduct specific research, and instead used his years of experience working with musicians and athletes to persuade musicians to take better care of themselves. The fourth research, which was published by Wills, delved into the lives of 40 modern American jazz musicians. Through studying written records of the lives of these musicians, the research was able to conclude that mental disorders and other various ailments often led to a greater level of creativity within the music of the musicians studied. This research hoped to shed light on the issues surrounding the musical community and, with any luck, offer a starting point for improvement. The final research found was by Wan and Wang. This research, involving 219 participants, collected information regarding the individual's overall insecurities, personality styles, optimism, mental health, and other various statistics. By fervently studying this information, it was proven that those who were more optimistic often had greater success in dealing with anxiety, while insecurity and mental health were drastically linked. By expanding upon similar studies, this research was intended to encourage a more optimistic lifestyle to those reading it, as well as propose further study.
The next step in developing conclusions for an accurate ethnography project requires primary resources to be acquired to allow comparisons to be made with the secondary research found. For this project, 3 interviews took place in hopes of obtaining these comparisons.
Changing color and
The first interview took place by means of face-to-face communication on October 29, 2018 at Kresge Library with Danny McCool, who prefers to be referred to simply as Danny. Danny has been surrounded by music essentially his entire life. However, it wasn't until he turned roughly 10 or 11 that he truly began developing that passion for himself through singing and playing drums. Over time, Danny learned other instruments, but these 2 forms of music remained his true desire. Though he never intended to become a professional musician, it was a band known as Cypress that changed his goals. Because of this, Danny was able to use music as an outlet unlike any other. It was during this interview that the three primary issues of this project became revealed. That is, the various methods of writing and sharing music, the effects of being open within one's music, and whether or not mental health correlates negatively with creativity. The next interview took place through email communications on November 1st, 2018, with a band known as Deal Casino. This band, comprised of Joe P., Joe C., John, and Chris, preferred to simply be called Deal Casino. In their current stage, Deal Casino has been performing music since 2015, though the individual members had operated separately far longer. When they realized they saw no possible future for themselves outside of music, it became clear that they needed to come together. Because of their great passion for music, Deal Casino was an ideal candidate for this ethnography project. The final interview was also through means of email communication on November 4th, 2018, with a YouTube musician that goes by the name of Jack Rose. Jack has written music since they were approximately 6 years old. However, it wasn't until recently that they began further exploring their passion in means outside of their own mind. Though they currently perform exclusively through ukulele and their voice, Jack is constantly working to improve their work. Because of their desire to grow and help others through their music, as well as the medium in which they shared their music, Jack Rose was a perfect candidate for the topics being studied.
With primary and secondary research being obtained, it is crucial to compare these two forms of research in order to draw a definite conclusion. These are the issues that were able to be concluded through the comparison of both research groups.
The three main topics of study for this ethnography project centered around the ways in which musicians composed and shared their music, the various levels of openness in one's music, and the possibility of mental health being the defining factor of a musician's greatness. According to the secondary research, musicians tend to be more creative when they have a greater number of mental health issues. While seemingly problematic, all of the interviewees agreed with this point. For Danny, being surrounded by musicians led him to believe that mental health was a defining factor in a musician's overall passion for their work. Without potential issues, many musicians lack the passion needed to succeed. Jack further proved this point by sharing their tendency to write music when they were more sad rather than happy. While they attempted to write music when they were happy, that music lacked the passionate touch and meaning sadder music had. Because of this, it can be concluded that music is far more passionate with these negative conditions and, if anything, serves as an outlet for those that need it. For the levels of openness musicians share in their music, the secondary research claimed individuals need a place to turn regardless of their circumstances. However, various personality types will use these places in different ways. For Danny, that means being selfish in his music. Danny's music is solely for himself, and the opinions of others isn't the driving factor, allowing him to be as open as he desires. Deal Casino felt similarly, but they noted a tendency to want to please their fans. Jack Rose, on the other hand, stated that pleasing others was the sole purpose behind their writing. However, that was driven from the fact that Jack wishes to help people with their music, and thus wants it to be appealing. Regardless of the circumstances, it can be concluded that being open within one's music is beneficial not only for the musician, but also to the listener. The final issue addressed was the theory that musicians are only as good as their mental health allows. This theory was proposed in the secondary research by Russell. However, each interviewee strongly disagreed with his claim. Deal Casino and Jack Rose were both very passionate on this subject, saying that sad music is essential in times of need. Furthermore, some of history's greatest musicians were people who could be considered broken. Because of the glaring inconsistency between the primary and secondary research, no definitive conclusion can be drawn. However, with the consistency amongst the primary research, it appears that a musician is far more than their mental health dictates.
Though further research is needed over a much longer period of time, general conclusions were able to be drawn through the comparison of the aforementioned research. However, with the constraint of 10 minutes, some information is also lacking. If there are any further questions, feel free to ask in hopes of expanding your knowledge on this subject.